If my community felt like it was toxic or dying, this is the exact playbook that I would use to turn things around. Hi, I am Keri Melissa Jones. I am a community researcher, strategist, and consultant working with some of the world's most influential brands to turn their audiences into engaged groups of people that have a shared purpose, a shared mission, and that come back and create something truly lasting and sustainable. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I would do to turn a community around that has gone off the rails. So if you are feeling like you are struggling, like it's like pulling teeth trying to get people to be positive, to make progress in your community, I want you to watch this whole video. If you want to stay on the cutting edge of community building news and trends, please subscribe to our newsletter written by myself, Keri Melissa Jones, and our Director of Strategy, Kelly Shetron at the CMJ Group. We go into the latest research and trends and stories about community building and how they apply to you and how you can stay innovative and on the cutting edge in your industry. So let's get into the playbook. The first thing that I would do is change my focus from trying to grow and drown out the toxicity. Instead, focus on where is there good here? Where is there some semblance of a strong foundation? So how we do this in our work is we always focus on a strong core membership. There are always natural leaders that are emerging in our communities, whether they are you, who is actually leading the charge on everything, or most likely a handful of other folks. In our communities that we look at, between 4 and 20% of membership is typically engaged. Now, some portion of that in a toxic community is not going to be engaged in a positive direction, but some portion of that 4% should be positively engaging, or at least show signs, even quiet ones, that there is hope here, that they still share your mission. So that is the first thing we need to do, is really zero in on who is here for the long haul, who is bought into our mission, and who is exhibiting some signs that they have hope and they want to be part of this turnaround alongside you. You should not, and in fact cannot, do this work alone. So you've got to find the people who are going to be your helpers in making this happen. Having this kind of mindset of rehabilitation alongside partners is a key shift for many leaders who believe that if we have some kind of a top-down leadership declaration, like this thing is going to turn around because I said so, things just don't work like that anymore. I don't know that they ever did, but they certainly do not now. What we need are folks who are going to form a really strong core, who are going to be part of shifting behavior with you, shifting culture with you, because that is really what you're trying to do here, is shift culture. And that is not easy work to be done. It doesn't require that you get everyone on board though. You just need that strong core. So figure out who those folks are and start to reach out to them, start to build relationships with them. One of our clients was navigating massive changes inside of their community. It had grown completely toxic, but it was a community of physicians and doctors in the United States. They had this big mission to help shift the healthcare industry to working more cohesively with insurance providers, but they were fighting with one another and fighting with the actual leader of the platform more than they were working together and moving that mission forward. So what our client did was they stepped back and they looked at the data and said, who is here? Who is helping? Who is exhibiting the kind of behaviors and the kind of attitudes that we would like to see moving forward? They looked not only at their technology stack and looked at, in the data, who they could see participating in this way, but also they ran a series of offline events where these folks really naturally could show up and arrive, and they could see them, truly see them stepping up, behaving more altruistically, being more pro-social in the ways that they were talking with other members. With this knowledge that there were people out there who could help architect this turnaround, they started to do this outreach. They started to have conversations. And this leads me to step 2. This is the second thing that I would do, and that is to have some really clear, systematic conversations with folks. Now, I know a lot of CEOs and a lot of leaders inside of organizations will do kind of a step back period. They'll do some deep listening, but we have to ensure that this is very, very systematic. So when we work with clients, we create specific scripts, we decide exactly who we need to hear from, and it's not always hundreds of people. In fact, it can be as few as 10 really diligent conversations that we're having, as long as we are starting to hear patterns emerging, figuring out in people's own words what's going wrong and what is their hope around, where are things actually going right that we can really amplify, and crucially, What is the shared mission that people are still bought into? Maybe not everyone is bought into that, but where are there some semblances of buy-in to this? This is really what we're listening to in this conversation. The other important thing about running these interviews is that this is not just for the purpose of getting the answers to your questions. A lot of people treat these kind of conversations as a means to an end. Great, I've just used some of your time. I've gotten the answers to my questions. We're done. That's entirely transactional. It feels awful from the member perspective. And so one of the core goals of these conversations is truly deeply, and you have to believe this to your core, to get to know and to start caring even more deeply about your members as whole human beings. They have lives outside of your community, outside of your workplace, in whatever context you might be in. We want to learn about that because it matters. It deeply, deeply matters. It colors everything that you see inside of your community. And so these conversations are systematic, but they're also deeply relational. So I would go from picking up that strong core to having conversations with that core and starting to then figure out where are their patterns and what do we need to change from this point forward. This would then bring us to step 3. Step 3 is to get really clear, if you haven't already, on what it is that your purpose and mission are. At the CMJ group, we call this the community compass. So it is a structure that helps you to outline specifically who are you for, how do you serve people in your community, and why does it matter? Why does it matter both to each individual, but also what is the kind of shared progress that everyone is making together? Sometimes it can be either or of those things, but ideally it's both. The individual progress also shapes shared progress. If you do not have clarity on exactly where you're going, on the vision for this moving forward, now is the time to get this really clear. And I do not recommend doing this until you've had the conversations, because you learn so very much from your members who are on the ground and have many diverse perspectives that you can then bring that together. And in fact, when you write this new purpose, when you create this new community compass, you can run it by these folks and get their feedback, help them co-create it with you, help them to figure out, what do we want to tear apart here? What do we want to rebuild? What can we say more powerfully? And so this becomes a process of collaboration. And when people collaborate and create things together, they're much more likely to care about them, to share them, to show up, because they feel heard and they feel like their voice matters. Once our community compass is in place, then we can start to think about member experience and creating a culture where this compass is really imbued in all pieces of the experience of that culture. What we do at this point is then take a look at what is the full breadth of that experience. So we'll do journey mapping and experience mapping inside of communities, from what does it look like to discover the community exists? What are all of the different avenues of discovery, to how do you join? What is the vetting process, if anything? Then what does it look like on day 1, day 15, day 30, all the way up until multiple years of membership? And how does that experience shift and change over time? And how can we, crucially, shift that experience intentionally with our asks, with what we're creating, with what we are serving folks with? So once we're really clear on what our purpose is, then we can get really clear on what the ideal journey is from here. Now, this journey, then, you can really start to layer in what is the progress that we want folks to be making here, and how can we usher folks along on that journey, and not only usher them along on their own personal journey, but also invite them into deeper rings of leadership alongside our other core leaders in our community, alongside ourselves, so that we are continuously not doing any of this alone. This then starts to create this culture where progress is happening, where people are being invited into co-creation, and we start to see shifts and change in the culture overall. Then I would get really crisp on exactly what onboarding looks like. Onboarding is one of the most important experiences you can possibly design in your community, and many leaders wait until months or years to really intentionally craft what onboarding looks like. Now, if that's you, there's no shame in that. That's okay. Now is better than doing it a year from now. But at this point, we want to get really clear. What are we welcoming people into? What are we inviting them into? What are we inviting them to do together? And how can we do it in a way that is even more aligned with our purpose and less toxic? So at this point, then you can roll out this new onboarding, but not only that, but especially if your community is toxic at this point, you want to re-enroll everyone in this onboarding as a kind of way of saying, hey, this is a reset. I'm putting a stake in the ground. we're operating differently from this point forward because everyone is kind of embarking on a new beginning together at this point. So that onboarding then not only affects all of your new members, but also everyone that's been part of the community so far. Through that experience, you're going to be really making clear what it is that your purpose is here, what is allowed and what is not. That's going to allow you to make more powerful moderation decisions. It's also going to allow people to step back and stop participating if they find that this community is no longer for them. So it is very possible that you lose some members in this process, but you're going to lose the ones who are contributing to that toxicity, who are not aligned with where things are going. And we need to practice surrendering and letting go and saying goodbye in a very gracious way during this period. This is a crucial inflection point for us as we move forward. There is lots of grief in this, and I always want to acknowledge that because folks instead they grip on and they say, how do we just not lose anyone? But in fact, this is a natural kind of evolution and process in any community, and it's okay to let folks go. Once all this work is done, what's going to happen is that you're going to have a really solid culture. You're going to have a really solid foundation for where you're going. And at that point, we can then move into the exciting piece, which is focusing deeply on growth. Now, a lot of people start with growth because what they're trying to do is drown out the bad with good, but that never ever works. It never works. What we need to do instead is do all of the steps before this to really solidify that foundation. And then we can start to think about growth. Then we can think about growth campaigns, partnerships. We can think about the different ways that we could be marketing our community and growing it in novel ways that we've never even tried before, because we're inviting people into a very clearly architected and purposeful experience and culture. So that is where things get really exciting again, but we've got to lay the groundwork first. Now, I personally think that that is the most fulfilling, gratifying work in the world that you could possibly be doing, because so much of our institutions are built on shaky foundations. And so bolstering that foundation is deeply, deeply gratifying. And that is where we need to focus our time and attention right when we're beginning. So that is the exact playbook I would run to turn a toxic community around. Now, every organization has its own nuances and situations that we have to work through. And that is where this work gets really, really fun and exciting. I want you to continue this journey with us by subscribing to our newsletter at the link below, and also following me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Keri Melissa Jones. I want to wish you the best of luck in turning your community around and having it have a bigger impact in the world, and in doing the important work of gathering people and bringing people together in the loneliest era of American history. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to staying in touch.